Well, good morning, and welcome to Church Talk Live.
Bill and Chris Tenney Britton here today to talk about building alliances. Now, this is one of those episodes that's really aimed at a fairly narrow target. We're talking to leaders of churches that are probably under 250 and a lot of churches under 100, although this is applicable to all churches of all sizes.
Yes.
And we're talking a lot to new pastors or to new pastors who come on the scene and need to get the lay of the land and begin moving change forward, as well as pastors who have come up against a brick wall, if you will, an obstacle or some obstacles, and need to build alliances to move forward through those. So we're talking to that kind of an audience.
Well, we want to say very much that as a basis here, that a lot of times we pastors or preachers, it's really about preachers, stand up, we cast this vision, and we expect everybody to just grab a hold of it and run, or to be 100% behind it. And if you've done that very much, you're finding, at least in most congregations, and particularly these smaller congregations, that the folks just aren't with you there.
Yeah, not so much. And so we want to talk about how to build those alliances. So let's start off by talking about who do you build alliances with. And Pastor, the first thing you need to know is you need to get to know your congregation. If you're new in the congregation, you need to know and get to know the people in your congregation. You need to get the lay of the land. Find out who has, if you will, the power, who are the ones who mold opinions, who are the ones that everyone defers to. And this takes some time.
Oh, yeah, you really do have to invest in time. You know, some of the telltale signs of these are watch who goes to lunch with whom after church, or who's had coffee with one another before church happens. Look at, just as you said, when someone wants to speak in an administrative type of meeting, who everybody glances at.
And one of the things you need to know is don't trust your hunches.
Right.
Just because you have an idea of who might, this is, we always say trust your hunches. This is the one place we say don't trust your hunches, because you may make a guess, and if it's wrong, it's going to cost you, or has the potential to cost you. So take your time, get to know for sure. Talk to the former pastor if you have access. Talk to those who are clearly in leadership, in top leadership. They may be the ones, but they may also know who are the ones who are in power.
And for matriarch and patriarchs, I'll tell you, I was in a church not too long ago, had been in there several times, and who I thought might have been the matriarch, I was having a little bit of trouble going with that. It wasn't who I thought it was. So that was kind of a fun understanding.
So you need to identify matriarch, patriarch, or tribal leaders in larger churches. Find out who are the leaders of the various tribes or groups. All right.
There you go.
Let's talk about how to
build those alliances, really.
Okay. Well, first you need to understand that effective alliances depend on trust.
Yes. That's why you got to build the relationships. Trust is all about relationship, and you often people will give you trust. Often they won't give you any trust up front. And if there's been any conflict with pastors in the past, and that's something to find out. You may not know going in there. You want to get a sense of how they relate to pastors, because if it's not been the best in the past, they're not going to trust you coming in. So you want to build those relationships. You want to build some trust. We like to talk in terms of making deposits. So you've got to make a lot of good deposits so that you can make withdrawals. We had a conversation not too long ago about a pastor doing the bulletins when the people who usually do the bulletins weren't available. And I don't know, maybe I convinced you for a change in this regard.
No, not so much.
But the pastor was making investments to say, hey, let me do this for you, instead of thwarting it off or saying, well, who are you going to get to do that? So build that trust.
All right. Now, the next thing you need to do is you need to uncover hidden agendas. Every church has some, if you will, skeletons in the closets, things they don't talk about, or things they talk about in hushed voices or behind the closed doors. And there are those churches that have, or individuals who have hidden agendas. I was at a church recently that has a special building fund for a covered carport in the back of the church. Someone wants that, and it's not at all viable, but that's what they've wanted. It's a hidden agenda that they continue to try and build some support for. They're building their alliances. So you need to find out those and then deal with them with political kid gloves. You just want to be carefully. You want to find out where those mines are in the minefield and don't step on them.
Well, and the other piece of advice we'll give to you is win the heart and win the day.
Absolutely.
It's those investments that you're doing. This is really about making everything about a person, and that this isn't you trying to get something through, but it's really pushing on your compassion button. You're caring about a person, not because you want to care, you think you need to care, but because you really do care.
Well, and one more piece about winning the heart and winning the day is find out what is near and dear to their heart that you can, if you will, leverage, or again, make some deposits in that area. Someone has a real heart, and they're matriarch, patriarch, or a tribal leader who has a real investment in a kids program. It might not be a bad thing and politically savvy, to do some work on building up that kids program, listening to them, getting their ideas, finding what ideas that are workable, and incorporate them. Those that aren't working, we're not saying do things that aren't helpful, but find out where it is and find out where you can build. And when you build that trust, and this is really, again, all about trust, when you build that trust, you can move your agenda, whatever that may be, for church growth or whatever you're doing.
So you do have to be savvy, right? And you've got to have been doing that homework over and over again. You just can't say, I'm going to build an alliance and you want to do this, you're all wanting to do this, so we're going to make that happen. You need to know how that idea is going to affect the rest of your alliances.
Right. You've got to have a strategy. Okay, let's talk about...
You don't want to set them up for failure.
Right, exactly. Okay, how to leverage. Let's talk about how do you leverage, once you have some alliances going, how do you leverage them without draining your deposits or, spoiling the relationships?
Sure.
And the first is, you already said, is do your homework. Know how the idea, whatever the idea you're trying to put forward, is going to affect your alliances. A lot of times we think we have a great idea, and we never think, how is this going to affect the congregation, or how is it going to affect individuals in the congregation? If you really want to have this is one example we do all the time. If you really want to have an alternative worship service so that you can reach younger adults and you have mostly older adults, a lot of congregations say, well, let's do blended service. Well, or let's change the service that we have. And that affects the people there dramatically. Better always is to offer an alternative service. We're not big enough for that. I know churches that have 25 people who go to a second service and begin to build immediately. Yes, it's a small service, but it's not a size thing. It's a heart thing, and you can move forward. So, discover how it's going to affect their alliances, and either make allowances for it or figure out how to convince them that this is the best thing for them.
Well, yeah, and I know a church that averaged about 25, maybe 35 in worship, started that second service against my suggestions to the other, and then before you know it, they had grown fivefold. It was pretty amazing to them. Okay, so do your homework and work through every objection with a possible positive answer.
At least a palatable
answer, a non-defensive answer. I mean, you really do need that. And I want to kind of tie this together with what you've just said, and that is have a plan.
Right.
We vision casters aren't always really good at doing the strategies, the tactics, and the logistics. Well, we've got an episode on that. I think
several episodes.
Yeah, several episodes. Maybe even a video. I'm thinking a DVD series on that. So you want to kind of break it down, not think that, I'm going to put it all out there and that it's all going to come in one fell swoop. You've got to have those details, and then instead of having to have answers for the whole thing, you can have the smaller answers for the smaller pieces.
But you have to work through that. You have to think, what are they going to say? What are the objections? And create your answers. Okay, when you cast your vision, one thing you want to look at is when you're, and you don't cast a vision from the pulpit to begin with. That is like insane. You cast vision one-on-one, and especially with your power people, cast that vision one-on-one, look at their eyes. If their eyes don't light up, then you probably made a miscalculation. You probably hadn't done your homework and hadn't thought, how is this going to affect them, and therefore didn't design or frame your vision in ways that affected them positively, or that they could see some great benefit maybe even altruistic benefit, but beyond them. They have to see that.
Well, I want to kind of slightly disagree there and say I don't like to work one-on-one with somebody, because if they are a naysayer, or they are a person of influence, they can shut you down, and then you've lost some momentum there. And to go farther than that, or further than that, you're going to be going up against them, and they may not like that at all. So I prefer to cast vision with 2, 3, at least 2, if not 3 folks that have influence that I can bring together, that I know have some can come to some consensus, and instead of having to come up against one person.
So, okay.
Yeah, I disagree.
Okay, that's fine. And that's good, because we do. So pick which one we want to work and go for it. All right, now.
Put them together.
Right. Now, well, in that, you really, what you've brought up
Sure.
is, what do you do when you have anti-alliances? When you have those who are going to try and shut you down, who are going to try and keep any change or whatever change that you are leading in the congregation, how do you overcome anti-alliances?
Well, you got to know who those naysayers are, and to realize not everybody loves you. Just because, we've been saying this, right? Just because you're the minister, just because you stand up there, just because you toss it out there, or even if you're a leader, you think you're an influential leader, you may be the chair of your administrative committee structure, and just because you say it, some people are going to be those ones who look down or go,
There's a whole lot of folks who will smile on your face, it's like, yeah, whatever, and then, shut you down from behind your back. So do your homework, know who your naysayers are, and know that they don't love you. And keep your friends close, but your enemies or those who are detractors closer. This is not the time to let them go off and say, okay, I just don't want to have anything to do with them. These are the people you want to continue to try and build, and don't be trying, but try to build alliances with, try not to convince, but share the vision and walk with them and keep your eye on them.
Well, it really comes back to relationship, and take that time to build relationship. Just because you think that this has to happen yesterday, and if those people are in the way, you are still going to be having lots of problems in the next year or 2 years. It would be so much more expedient to bite your teeth, hold your breath, smile through beyond those teeth, take happy pills before you go, and work on that relationship to where they can give you at least a modicum of trust.
However, know that that's not always going to happen. That there are times when you have to climb up on your bulldozer and move forward. And the way to do that is by building alliances that can overcome the anti-alliances. So very often, especially in smaller churches, you'll have 2 or 3 people that will scuttle every good idea, no matter who has it. And even if a majority wants to go forward with any particular idea, they will scuttle it, because they will make enough noise and the majority will capitulate.
Which is all the more reason why you've got to have numbers, and you have to do that, right? You've got to be building numbers in your alliances so that you can completely move through that. And I'm not into the bulldozer language by any stretch of the imagination, but I really know that there are those that you cannot allow to hold you back. What is it? Something, I think, on Star Trek about the good of the one does not overcome the good of the many. There it is.
Right here, the key here is you've got to build broad alliances, but strong alliances. And the strong alliance is one that's going to stand with you when the rubber hits the road. When the times get tough, they're going to stand with you. And you have got to build the alliances and help them understand what they're doing and the opposition they're likely to come up against.
There it is, and you got to have critical mass.
Right.
Okay,
right.
Not just a few, but critical mass.
Right. Know that you have the numbers. Don't start a battle unless you know the outcome. That's the biggest key here. Is if you're going to go to battle, make sure you can win. Jesus talked about this in one place about counting your cost. You don't go to battle against 20,000 if you only have 10,000 unless you know you have some sort of a way of overcoming.
And the battle is worth it.
That's right.
Because if you're looking at your plans, right, we're talking about war and battle, and that battle may not be the one you want to fight. It may be something that you're going to move through, because the next battle is really the one that's going to count.
Don't get backed in the corner. Hey, we are totally out of time.
Completely.
We'll see you next week.
Have a great week.